and tablam ruda and dunga sege tablam zodi garache orasena and samlo yutone and jangdora samlo gyuata betone and tikitubiata and dunga se ore sheche that in zada ngajuge samli tone and tikitubta dunga gyusayale that samtana garistang ore sena that in ma the chik chosa chipjang se chikin 당아저 소사 집장치 오래서 소사 집장라도 아주 삼르나로 기위 삼로디 야 슈추 처처다다 아 삼르 미기위 삼로디 마 아니 매바스에 누가 총다데 매바스에 되라 직 소사 세디 개와사에도 소사 바지 집장시를 아주 셈나라 미기위 삼로디 마 매바스에 되 누가 총다데 매바스에 될 집장시 이내 자다 되네기 삼르다나들이야 as you like to be going and take a Chivapu and Chasawana and the Diva Shapa said the Ondus and Kewalaches of Yirawa and the Chukoloku, Soa Deba, Yangal Mideba, Soa Deba, and the Kewa say Yala Dunuko in the Society of Chaja or Ese, the Nezadan Yala, Dambo Sum de Shisavata, Chisada, Soasavada, and Diva Shapa Diva Kazan.
Good evening. All of us here want to abide in lasting, stable happiness, a happiness that's freed from all problems and difficulties. And this is not something unique to us, but is shared by all beings. So to achieve a lasting state of happiness, one needs to accumulate those causes that will lead to happiness. And to attain a state freed of suffering, one needs to identify and eradicate the causes that will otherwise lead to suffering. And the method for doing so is primarily transforming our very way of thinking. We need to engage in a process of accumulation and purification. Accumulation is the process of accumulating merit or accumulating virtue, is the process of strengthening our wholesome ways of thinking. And the process of purification, this is the process of eradicating unwholesome ways of thinking or non-virtuous ways of thinking. So this really is the meaning of accumulation and purification. And Lama Tsongkhapa here is presenting the skillful method of the 7 limb prayer, in which one both accumulates merit and purifies non-virtue. And these 7 limbs are those of prostration, offering, confession, rejoicing, requesting, supplicating, and dedication. And of these 7, we've looked at the first 3, that of prostration, offering, and confession, last time. And now we'll come to the 4th, that of rejoicing.
Denige samlo di sem de gelia samlo de gelo de gelia dikwa se orda gaje digaresin dikwa se garesin di gyuje bala tene an di debu de la marazul ya rashan rale makiba shale makiba kanga ji ngo res jisna denige dunga nyoya gi gyujin za ko dikwa se ko sem de la mi dikwa res ye 당아주 개와세들에 가서 삼나래 셴리아 세와 지금에 녀버 지금에 선비게 삼로티 대다 안샬리아 안지게 대기 준다 선비게 잠바 고미하다 셴심제 동안라 자나 선비게 삼나데 안데 니제 고미야 네 셴리아 안지게 소수기 류롱죄다 안 소수기 시엔 뉴베 강기 토네 셴리아 펜버 두긴 선비게 삼다베네 진비 삼다데 되네게 삼로티게 차상 개와래서 오르다 지사 되네상 저기 개와사 시대 되네게 삼로되게 누바야 공부 땅고래서 당아주 기신 디바샤 시대 기신 아마 디바샤 기시도 먼저 디바세디 제자 되샤 셰단 디무고 원기 가서야 디바 몽보니마 다소서 하모고 니마다 지수수기다 나도 개왕아 마생아망아마네 망고여와다 제자다 니네기 토는 디바 몽고 사여 되샤 셰단 디무 숨기 디왕기 셰라 네바 제바다 체와 제바다 셰야 강아 제바 니네기 망고 중요레스 디도 차사 노르레샤스 디링한도 삼다다 노르레샤 디티미도 셈베게 삼는 노르임바다 하고 와제 노르 레샤 셈베 삼다 디티미노 셈베게다 삼다들 겨바시로와다 겨바스 다데네 아니가서 오디네 기직다 샬레 네베 자와 세웨 삼바다 데네에 제 강아 직 디규 삼노디게야 마옹바다 자와기네 지기메 셈베 삼다이다 근데 돔셈세 아치로와다 돔셈제 단 디링에다 디 아니고 데네기 디바당에 야 temne konjo sumna tene anning thakwane shagin samje andi temne konjo sumje da tingi dup charu ro tingi dup tene shagin samne tene sosogi gewa karuba na gewa di da nimbe dup seje 제나데 개와 주변도 베네 소소게 차푸야 소소게 쳐바푸야 아니 소소게다 즉 장쇼 셈고미야라서 왔다 안지 소소 검자야 잘 안차세 고라고라 근데네게 안쳐바푸야라서 봐 개와 가래서 베네 단님베도 없어 데네게 삼나 개와 사야디 두시네 디바샤바세 기승이 디고 맞아 데네 쉬로 더도 쉬베네 디로하다
Previous classes, I've spoken several times about the meaning of virtue and non-virtue. So I imagine this is clear, but nevertheless, it's always useful to repeat. So if we take a class of consciousnesses, a class of minds, such as malice, harmful intent, anger, jealousy, pride, attachment, these are all non-virtuous. These are afflictions, and they are non-virtuous. And the reason they are called non-virtuous is because they result in suffering. And moreover, not only are those ways of thinking, those minds, non-virtuous, the physical or verbal behavior that results from them would also be called non-virtuous, because these lead to, these ways of thinking and their resulting speech and physical activity create the causes that result in future suffering. They are the causes of suffering. And it's for this reason those ways of thinking and the resulting behavior are called non-virtuous. The opposite group of minds or consciousnesses are virtuous or wholesome. These are, for example, the ethical restraint, the determination not to harm. Minds such as love, which is the deep and abiding wish for beings to abide in happiness, and for their commitment, perhaps, to help them cultivate the causes for happiness. And similarly, compassion is a virtuous mind. This is the sincere wish, may all beings be freed from suffering, and may they be freed from the causes of suffering. And then other consciousnesses such as generosity. These are included within the virtuous or meritorious or wholesome ways of thinking. And then last week we concluded with the limb amongst the seven of that of confession or purification. So there one recalls that not only in this life, but in lives previous to this, one has given rise to so many afflictions and acted physically or verbally under the influence of these afflictions, and thereby accumulated tremendous non-virtue and brought harm to others. These are the causes of suffering that abide on our continuum and will ripen in our future experiences of suffering. Here we start by recalling this and generating a deep and sincere regret for having given rise to such afflictions, and in particular, if we acted under their influence. So this is the first opponent power for purifying past misdeeds, that of regret. The second one is that of restraint or promise, where one promises to refrain one's mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions and thereby not acting physically or verbally under the influence of the afflictions. That's the second antidotal power, where one commits to restraining one's mind or promises to restrain one's mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. And the third is the power of reliance, or the basis. And this is expressed in terms of we make confession to the three jewels. We have a strong belief that the three jewels are present, and we confess our past misdeeds to them. They bear witness to our confession. So these are three of the four antidotal powers for purifying past misdeeds: that of regret, that of restraint, and that of the basis. And then the final one is that of the antidote. And the antidote is what will serve to complete this process of purification. And it can be any virtuous activity that one is inclined towards. So it can be meditating on a topic of your choice, whether impermanence or love or compassion or emptiness, or it can be engaging in an activity such as prostrations or making offerings or circumambulation. So this then is where we concluded last week, looking at the process of confession and purification.
That's those in it. There's some of those number in it. Chasang Gavariation, some of the Nistan Gure said it. Chisa, the Niki Gavasa, the Nigida, Chikavakia, Chinchime, Sempe Samlo, and Gonjosum Japsu to Jamro, then Tibasha Gava, Chio to the Chasang Gavar to Chaver. Chatan Gavati, the Nigi, Mangbo, the Dinis, Chikio, the Gavasava said, Dusine, some of the Dambana, that Gavasa or Hesur, that some of those Tango or Essage, some down Hashlev Gorwada.
This process of purification has these four antidotal powers, but all of them individually and certainly collectively are virtuous. So they all actually lead to the accumulation of virtue. The first is regretting past misdeeds. That is virtuous. The second is the power of the promise or restraint, where one commits to not once again engaging in non-virtue. That too is a virtuous mind. And the third is the power of reliance, where one turns and confesses to the three jewels. This too is a virtuous mind. And then the antidote is explicitly any virtuous activity. So therefore, all four of these are actually virtuous minds, and they serve to purify.
Gawala Jisu Iran Cheva said, Danya Sam Dana to sit in the share, Gawala Jisu Iran Chine, Sam Dana to Tango, rest in the Taman, and the Gawasa reset, the Gawala Jisu Iran Chetan, Sam Tango resin, then it in the Tango reset, Jisu Iran Sam Dana, Marshu word in Mother.
We'll continue then now with the fourth of the seven limbs, that of rejoicing in virtue. Rejoicing, of course, is like with all of these, it's a mental expression, because the focus of training to gain freedom from suffering is to train our mind, to develop our mind, and rejoicing is part of that.
And in Matidila, Jesu Irani is a Choju Gawa, Shesoji, Tsichi Jik, Desa. So
turning to the text, if you have the handout, it's the very bottom of page 54. If you have the published book, it's at the bottom of page 48. And as I mentioned last week, the Tibetan doesn't have the verses. In English we have the verses. The Tibetan just has the first three words of the first line. So Geshe read out. Rejoicing is set forth in the stanza, and then going to the commentary from Lama Tsongkhapa. As you recall the benefits of the virtue of the five types of persons, you cultivate joy.
Now, Choju Gawa Sheso, Tsichi Jik, that's Tsichi Jik. That's Tsichi Karelana, Choju Gawa Kuna, Sanye Se, Ranjan Namda Lobdang, Milobdang, Draw Kuna Pension, Kasa Draw Kunyu Sunam Galaya, Yada Kunyi Jiso Dai Rang Sech, or the Tsichi Jik.
And then the verse that is referenced is, as we have at the bottom of either page, I rejoice in all the merit, whatever it may be, of all the Buddhas of the 10 directions, Bodhisattvas, Pratyeka Buddhas, those with more to learn, those with no more to learn, and all ordinary beings. And just to say this translation in the third and fourth line of learn, with more to learn or no more to learn, this can also be expressed as train. It's the same word, with no more to train, or with more to train.
Choju Gyo Gunda Sidi, that Choju Najubi, Sangye Chasans or Gyo Gunda said. That's Sangye said, that Sangye said, Janju Sympathy, or Sangye says. That Ranja said that Ranja Gaza Lamia Ranja. lobda si de nyen gi lam nyamle che lobe kansa phap tra chuma mai ba lobe kansa ti yele ya loba as lobdang mi loba si de da tra chuma as ore da danda la nyen gi tra chuma da nyen tra chuma mai ba nyen gi lam nyamle chi kan cha sa se ji odu chi ne che re de no zhuo kun si de dang an so so ki bo lam nyamle lam gyu le ki ma ji hen da nga zu zhuo chue nyamle ge wa zhu ti hen da zhuo kun se de dang an de zemle de le yo ba da di me ze ling xian da chen da gang yo ba cha sang si go da zhuo kun se年对人年对这就不是天命这就不是话年对罗巴年对这就么满印巴的年对罗巴是米罗巴是这就不是，等到了年对给南区就刚是吃上西过的了。恰现在就不是上街了的，上街嘛都要么上街当不拉萨了，天天讲学生不拉萨了，天天让家是的让家这就把它这就买一把车拉姆就来吃上些是吧？那罗不米罗是的年头给是的，年头给的罗巴是米罗巴是的，年头罗巴是没你好像是年头拿了也人把蒙古街要等到这些个嘞，现在等到了年头给这就么这部码头被年头拉姆就干啥的，天天米罗巴是的年头这就么这部 top 推干啥些。但南区就干啥吃上做啥的了？但现在南年们买这个给来买这边呢，去年们给我做对看的，做公司的俺就几天也看地当，俺看现在搞我月份呢吃上是好的。
The Tibetan starts and continues from for us is in the second line of English. It starts with the Buddhas of all 10 directions. In other words, every being who has attained enlightenment. So all the Buddhas, not just Buddha Shakyamuni, but all the Buddhas. Continues to then the Bodhisattvas, then the Pratyeka Buddhas, or that solitary realizers, and those with more to learn or more to train. So this refers to the Theravada practitioners who are not yet arhats, and those with no more to learn refers to the Theravada arhats. And then lastly, and all ordinary beings. And this refers to all beings who have yet to cultivate a path in their continuum, such as ourselves. But it's all ordinary beings throughout our world, as well as other worlds. So every being that is yet to attain a path. And what we see then expressed in these 3 lines is being referenced each and every being, divided up in different classes.
다 대다 군이 된 지산 대다 군시도 대다 강을 시행 가사데 차상계소 대다 군이 안에 제수 이랑 시도다 대다 군이 제수 이랑 다 이랑 시도 권주 차상계 권주계 40에 개월이야 네 제수 이랑 지긴세 월다 된다 제수 이랑 지긴세 지지디 된다로 시다로.
Then the final line in the Tibetan is our first line. I rejoice in all the merit, whatever it may be. So this then is rejoicing in all the merit of every single class of being.
에딘마 제르미지기 제와나라야 가상아보 디 게와 게위 판윤 전에 가와 공부하고 쓰되 지상 가상아보 세대지 상계다 장슈 선바다 랑계다 년뒤시 시차소와 시루와 안데네 로와 대한 저기 되디 조심자 탐지 계획 자우주게 가사지 될에 제변의 가상아 차야지도 안디 멤버지 아직 상계시 장슈 선바지 니제 랑계지 숨제 년뒤 로바치 시제 년뒤 자준바치 nga se de kasa nga se de delia zibe ne kasa nga bo di ke wala ju si rang ho se de ji sa da o kasa nga bo di ke wala ane ke wi phen ni le ke wa de pha jen che ke khon zu cha sang ke wa sa shi be ke wa de pha jen che ga ho ji su ira se de jen jen de ni pe yak bo re sa ya de le da pe yak bo re khon zu de ni ke wa pe yak bo re se be ga ho kon ba de dan ji su ira che ba se wa da. Nambo de la sangye che, Jiangju Senpa che, Rangye che, Nyandue che, dene kam sumnani be lam nyamlem lam gyula magyeban to kewe chawa drupte ken drowa kun. 딩가시 나지에도 나지다도 지간에 스티브는 지다님 자사로와.
Then Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary. As you recall the benefits of the virtue of the 5 types of persons, you cultivate joy. The 5 types of persons can be expressed in differing ways. So we can have, as we have in the text, Buddhas as well as bodhisattvas, solitary realizers, and then hearers would be referred to those with more to learn, and then arhats, which would be with those with no more to learn. Or another way to express the 5 types of beings would be Buddhas and bodhisattvas, solitary realizers, hearers, and all ordinary beings.
Jesu konzu gewa dushibe gewa di pa Jesu tenche pe yakore sam gawa gombade da Jesu ira che ba se dirwa.
This is really just saying rejoicing in the virtue of all beings.
Na anzuge da jik dor duro bishina dire. Na delia da Jesu ira che be gewa den go ro da kanis den go re se be da samdan du che ta ba na dang bo sang ye le pa samda ba na. Jina sang ye se di dang bo nga zu na xin ji ba cha de ro ba. Dang bo nga zu na ji ba re. Jina da sang ye se di ko rong go lo bjong che che ni ko wa lia ko wi ge ko wa le gyuen thong che nga so la kina kanga den de dunga yong do wa nya wa le kina den de dunga yong do du sin ko sim ju che ba che che sa nya wa le ya dunga yo ba kanga yo ba den nga so le ne da kanga nga zum che nya yi da da dun ro de ke ya kanga den sin do wa su kanga sam da an di ma ja nga mi ne da kanga ka de sto se de kanga yo ba da che kin ne na sa ge kanga pa zu pin jun chu bo ja ma zhe ge kanga an ji ge 내얌기니 강하다 강하다 말을 네 중앙 투비 이렇게 강하다 말하든 연구 봐대 네 셈마기 봐집에 강하 안징아 저기 대비기 된 마주바다 되게 소속이 된다 여바디 파 라조서 쇼서서 삼제 강하 되니기도 전에 강하도 셈배 삼다 되는 delya 할래네 대거서 강하도 수 되니게 삼다네 세상 코와들에 닝보 민도 세비 코와들에 닝보 민다 동아라 제샤 코와들에 탈고도 셈비게 코의 견노제 코와를 탈비게 탈되게 삼바 코와를 탈비 탈바세 토고도 셈비게 탈되게 삼바 아니 곰바레세 양보되네 삼다곰 니바되네 되네 삼다도 다 소소라랑 코와를 타바서 동아를 타바마 랑 세데 미치라 지그레 다 셈전 세데 타야바 빠도 메바쇼 제 갸침버레 지난 셈전 상황 나랑 대화 나신 콘소에 대화 되고 말에 나 동아 마디반에 콘소에 동아 되고 말 나도 시간 지금 지기하래샤 지난 대화 되바 지바레 동아 메디바 지바레 지난 당내 셈전 디게 차상 라리야 팬도 받은 랑기 디기 차산 셴sem절에 되는 중국어도 제가 셴세데 라리야 팬도 첨부래셔 제가 되는자 되니게 강아세에 된 가랑 지고 섬도 콘수 섬마다면 배 노트 디디기면 제가 랑 나신 셈전 탐제 대화된 덴버 dengu도 제가 덴버 쇼 선배게 되니게 제바 제제 대화된 되나 선배 잠재kom 되는 셈전은 동화다 자고 선배 니제kom 되는 니제kom네 다 셈전 동화다 자와나 되게 덴바다 니지긴 선배 라산 남다게 되는 다당에 자와라 한 탑람 가르고도 쓰네 다 탑시디 교연군세 연대고 사기기 고파 토고도 선배게 자주셈 토고도 선배 자주셈게 되는 자주심이야 다 삼개바 전기미도 자주심비 줘봐 랍긴 세비 된 남자 켈렌진의 파로도 준비 줄이야 냠년 제제진 진비야 파션 수비 파션 준비 삼대 셰랍 동방이 되게 셰랍 디곰발에 때네 안에 사교고 뭐 톱소와레스 제가 디스만 디고미에 되게 차사다 연된 상기 연된 디스 상기기 디네 곰베갑레나 아주 셈된 탐지기 된다 디기 주비에다 동화세계 삼당 곰발에 빼야고래 셈비게 되는 게 삼다다 되는 상기에 차베이네야 다 상기기 특지 왕경 아주 셈된 탐지라 감다 매바도 튕비기 동화세 코롱기 냠용이디 냠용 여바데다 셈전 탐지려 동화세야다 디기주 탑람디 바도 매바 송제 탑람 바도 매바 송요레스 지선배 맞아 야고 쉬우랴 선배게 되네 깨진 첨부 쉬우랴 선배게 상기기 연된 두신의 전제 두신의 전제 사고 연된게 파데 전에 배 야고래 선배다 쉬우지 야고래도 선배게 당한 쪽에 지금 미교고 지글야 지 림보치다 우이망고 슈지 라베다 가고 슈지 능루아 어디나신 가와 슈지 검지 두치는 삼배야 그래 삼배기 두치는 가와 검이데 다 상기기 연대라 연대 제제 대라 제수 점바 제전 제바소다 제 제수 이라 제바시데 가와 검바데라 두치는 상기기
Therefore, we've now looked at this limb of rejoicing in brief. So to look at then in more detail and how to actually rejoice. Because rejoicing in virtue is something that's very easy to say, but for it to be meritorious isn't merely expressing this, but it is to have a deep sense of joy arising in the virtue of others, or in the good qualities even of others. So let's take an illustration of a Buddha. So when you think of a Buddha, in order to rejoice in the good qualities of the Buddha, one calls to mind, though there are many good qualities, and one way to do so is to remind ourselves that a Buddha was not always a Buddha. A Buddha was once an ordinary being, no different from ourselves, sitting in a teaching environment, hearing teachings, going away, reflecting on them again and again. And then they came to see, through this process, the faults of samsara. They came to see that there is nothing of great meaning or any great purpose that can be found anywhere in samsara. Through this practitioner's analysis, they went through the varying realms and saw that there was no great meaning, nothing of great meaning that can be achieved in any realm of samsara. And when, in particular, they would have looked at that of the human existence, reflecting on the varying divisions of suffering, the divisions into threefold, sixfold, and eightfold divisions of suffering, reflecting on the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, reflecting on the suffering of meeting the unwanted, the suffering of being separated from the wanted, the suffering of not getting what one wants, what one desires. Reflecting this way deeply, that ordinary being then gave rise to a deep disenchantment with samsara, a deep dissatisfaction with samsara, recognizing there is no lasting happiness to be found here. But there is a lasting happiness that can be found by gaining liberation from samsara. And in this way, definite emergence was generated. And each practitioner who went on to become a Buddha went through that process, but did not leave it at the generation of definite emergence or renunciation, but they reflected further that the reality that they've come to recognize in relation to themselves is equally applicable to all their loved ones, all those that they hold dear. And in fact, not just to them, but to each and every single sentient being, without exception. In that, on a fundamental level, we are all the same. Superficial differences are nothing more than that, than superficial. On a fundamental level, we all yearn for happiness, a state freed of problems and difficulties. So we are all the same. Moreover, we are not independent, but deeply entwined, deeply mutually dependent, interdependent. And the being that went on to become the Buddha recognized this through understanding the way that all beings have shown them such kindness and brought such benefits into their lives, both directly and indirectly. And this led to a deep sense of appreciation for the kindness of others. This then spurred that practitioner to develop sincere love for others, the wish that for them to abide in happiness and to cultivate the causes that will lead to happiness, and generate a sincere compassion that may all beings be freed of suffering and eradicate those causes. And thereafter generated a sincere altruistic attitude whereby they took personal responsibility for ensuring that beings are guided to achieve such a state. And to make that a reality, they then generated that determination to become a Buddha for the sake of others. And in that way, each being that went on to become a Buddha generated bodhicitta. Thereafter, they trained in all 6 perfections: generosity, ethics, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration, and wisdom. And it was in this way they attained Buddhahood. So this is one way to reflect on the incredible qualities of a Buddha, giving rise to a sense of awe at what they have achieved and sincerely rejoicing in that. But in fact, when a being attains Buddhahood, that's not the end of their journey. Now, finally, they are ready to fulfill that long-held commitment, the commitment to alleviate the suffering of others. Now they have all the qualities required to act in perfect ways to benefit others. And the most meaningful way to help is to teach the Dharma, to guide beings how to cultivate the Dharma within. And this is what each Buddha does continuously. Reflecting in this way leads to a sincere rejoicing in the qualities of a Buddha. And a practitioner who is sincerely rejoicing those qualities will be valuing those qualities and aspiring to do so too. It can be likened to the joy that we recognize when someone perhaps wins the lottery, the great joy that arises in their mind. Here, someone who values the qualities of the enlightened mind will generate similar joy when recalling them. And this, then, is how we should aspire to rejoice in the qualities of a Buddha.
Den dus change da den igen dan ro din ajin da san ji ge yun de ya pha ngam sam da jang ge de tu si wen da cha me ting jo ro da ne za du chen sam da de san ji yun de le ga ko myo de da chi di chi san ge wa re so da ge wa sa go re sam du stang go re sa din ajin da jang ju sen ba ma sam da ben da ju sen bi yun de ge sam da an pe ya go le sam da de jang ju sen bi yun de sam da be ne 다 상이 줌린데 마 안지 냠용의 토네 상이 냠렌제 안 탈신 상이 고번 톱 되네 제 원기 나즈를 최마 냠내 짐바 송샤바디 전시선바디 기기 상지 송바 나신제네 어느 코와라 님이 되네 타바도니 삼바곰 대신하신 안 자리야 잠바다 제와다 이제 곰나 장슈셈곰 장슈셈 귤라게네 되네 파신 주기 냠래야 두스 냠랭 짐바 랍신베 가사 장슈셈바디 두슬레고르바 되네제 되네게 냠랭 제바 상지 송바 나제 코로도 냠랭 제제 되네게 샹야 코로도 상지 고반 토베게 유 바도메바 사고레스 안디메베 샹래야 펜바 개침뭐 심제 탐지기 돈달 삼다 뱀 마스비게와 쇼지 야고로 샘비게 되네게 삼다제 콘센슈스비 연된디게 파테 안델마 안지 예 연된디 야고레 샘바가와 콤바디 나 전슈스비게 개와를 지수 일한 샤바스 자고로와
Those who are greatly educated in the Dharma, even for them, it's difficult to have a deep appreciation of the limitless qualities of Buddhas. But an approach such as what I've just mentioned is a way that one can recall sufficiently the qualities of a Buddha in order to generate sincere joy. Then take bodhisattvas. Here, these are these remarkable beings who actually are walking in the footsteps of the Buddhas. They have trained in exactly the same way that the Buddhas did, because that is how Buddhas guided them to generate bodhicitta. And now that they have generated bodhicitta, that they have a heart filled with love and compassion for all other sentient beings, they are continuing to train in the way that the Buddhas are guiding them. They're training their mind in the 6 perfections, with a determined focus on accumulating virtue through aiding suffering mother sentient beings. And they're doing so in order to become Buddhas, in order to be able to help even more beings even more perfectly. Recalling that then too we generate joy and rejoice in the qualities of bodhisattvas.
Dinashi da Range da Nendiki ne Sanyo Jumnendiki ya Tarvatoyage Tablam Demba Nashi Sanyilia and Sumba delia Yishi Devachi and the Sanjila Japso Jonde Deneke Sanyo Sumba Nashi Koalia Nimita and Koala Tarve Tarvatoya Samba Com Dene and Denea Jimbe Yamlen, Sube Yamlen, Jundri Yamlen, Jimba da Chujim da Seba Jundri something things in the dame about we share our comju, those chin and Yamlen Chase, Corons and Yamlen to Scumgore, Yamlen Chede, Gawa, the Nig Chasan, the Nig some Gomia Chasan Gawa about me bus, the Nig Yamlen Jebe, Yakore, some the Nigi, Kore Donga, Tarje, Tarbi, Jajimoko, one, you do Toyata, the Nig Yamlen Nangora, Beakore, some the Nig Gawa some Daje, and the Yakore, Sembe Beakore, Sakawa Combati, and Yanada. The
process of rejoicing in the qualities of heroes and solitude realizers is similar, recognizing their deep faith in the Buddhas and the Buddha Dharma, and through that, training in exactly the way that they are being guided to, developing a deep and sincere disenchantment for samsara, giving rise to powerful definite emergence by which they strive for liberation from suffering through engaging in the 6 practices of generosity, ethics, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration, and the wisdom realizing selflessness, with a determination to gain complete freedom from the sufferings of samsara. Recalling those remarkable good qualities, one rejoices in them and in their virtue.
On that the Negi Lam Yamlin Jematu Lam Gili Jematu in Anjuki, Jiki, Zemlin Tumbi, that's such a kang, Kazakalia, Tumbi, Shesu Traji, Sanyo Jumnen Delia, and Devata, Ishiche, Sanyo Jumnendi, Lamdun Geshe Batelia, Sosugi, then Nubigi, Jopi, Sosulu, Nuba the Tumbutone, Yamlen Chicken, Pardon me by your ass, Tangan the Zemlin Dinali, Tangan the Dade, your Dimembe, Tanganzuki, Jehab Dinali, Katsakali to Sicily, the name member, Lumba Shanda Shanda, Dinashin Jehab. Semling di membegada ling shanda shandalia lada midang denige chasan keo tukentiki tembale tembe jesu zhang tembale sanyo jumne de la jep su sung delia yishi che an chi sanyo sung she bege delia lam nyam ne rimbale keo tukentiki be yawra sembege denige delia denige samda je kunju keo tubadele jesu irang gawo kom na soso rani ne sanjelia Sanjele Debada Yishi, Sanji Sonshabegi, Jesu Iran, Kasa, Jesu June, Anzuki Deniki, Chen Yamlen Chair, Sosuki, count to the Yamlen Chair, but Beabore, Samje, Gao Combatida, Rangi Kawala, Gao Combatis, and Denegi, Gawa, Shen you to be Kawala, Jesu Iran, Kape Abores, and Gawacom, Rangi Chebadine, Beabo Junson, Yabo Junshas, and be Gao Comadida. Agawala Jesu Rama, Kasa, Lam Yamle Maje, Matubi Kasari, Tisugi Kawala Jesu Rat, Jetan Dushin, some Dairo.
Then rejoicing in the qualities of those who are yet to attain a path. There we think of all those beings, whether in this country, those that we know and do not know, as well as those elsewhere in our world, as well as throughout our world and other worlds. Thinking of, for example, their faith in the Buddha and the teachings of the Buddha, and the practice that they are engaging in through hearing teachings, reflecting on those teachings, and putting them into practice in accordance with whatever their particular capacity is. Rejoice in that. And rejoice then in relation to one's own good qualities, one's own faith in the Buddha and the Buddha Dharma, one's own desire to cultivate paths of the Dharma within, and one's own endeavors to do so. Rejoice in one's own good qualities, because to get to wherever we are required extensive effort over an extensive period of time to accumulate these causes. So therefore rejoice in your own good qualities.
Denigi, Jesu Iran Chia Gawa Kum Siadida, Dushine, Jesa Jerim Chigi, Gela Jesu Iran, Chodonga, said Shenyi Gewala, Rana, Shenyi Gewala, Jebadilla, Jesu Iran Cheba de Geo Peawres. Jesa di Sociogalia Moashe, Gesu Gewashi Sago Regile, Ben Mishandachi, Ben Chiga Tam Yandujo Gomjab, Mishandachi and Shandaki Chebopui, Pajiba, Mikola, Robert Chiada, and Jaconjola Chopuada, Lama Lecho, the Niki Chigu, but how would be Yapore, some of our company, Sosugi. Jigo Martina, Shengi Cheba de la Gawa community, Gawasago, Echeza, Dusin, Jena Jerem Jekela, Jesu, Chodonga, said, so I did some more.
Lama Tsongkhapa elsewhere encourages us to engage in rejoicing in the virtues of others and ourselves because it is such an easy way to accumulate virtue. And he advises that when one sees or recalls or imagines others engaging in activities of virtue, such as having faith in the Dharma, perhaps seeing images of the Buddhas and giving rise to faith, or hearing teachings or yearning to hear teachings, as well as putting those teachings into practice through meditation, or yearning to be able to do so, which whatever expressions of virtuous minds that one sees, recalls or imagines, rejoice in that, and rejoice sincerely. In that way, one will accumulate merit with great ease.
Gawaresur. That Jesu Iran Gomba de Gawa Gomba di Dayan Gariungresene Shenlia, Shengi, Gawa Chepala, Chado Yungo Mare, Chado. Shen answer Chado again, Yangayumurwada, or the Kochi do that could Yawacha some Chado in the Kol never Kiadayon, Chado Yungumares, and then Ayayumares. Rang da Shen Yawala Jesu Yaburis, Shen the Yaburis and some time, Rang Nagaki Mares. Shen Yawala Jesu Iran Gawa community, Shen Ya Chado Yung Shen Gawachi Lia, Chado Yung Mares, Chado some little Yomo, but Diba Gagores, Tayaji Shen Ya, Naya Sosorang Shen Ya, Tongjo, the Naya Yedi, somebody Mikewares, Chesan Dipa Gagores, Chesan Migawa Nigas or Chado, Samlodiaga, Yungumido, and the Chigi Naya somebody, which is a Deniki, and Yomo Beritipa, Gagores, Chado Kigmare, Naya Kigmare, and Dimase, Sosugi, Gawati Shangi, Yendi Pa, Tenji, Be Yahure, some Gawa Gomodu, Sosuina, Dinashing, that Jewudon, Naya, the Towud, and Amatum Tap Nusambi, the Sosugi, Yendi, Donya, Dumbadi, Shukchertangores, says that the Donya, Dumba Shukchertabaina. And then Yanda Ranga Chanshis Batam Jig, Lam Lobana, Higa Jigin Sabi Samlodi, Shukcherbaina, the Lam de la Palapjene, Lam Yamnejela, Tanya Rugore, Lam Yamnejela, Yamnejesoban, and San Yogomato, Tanya Rugore, Chesa Dineza, Gaokum Bigi, go on digging, Chado Shenla, Chado Majeba, Shella Ngado, Nayel Majeba, and the Rangi. Chicken Yamlin Jay, Dumba Dunya, the Shukcherta, Cherta Viking, Rangin Yamlin Delia, Betuchene, Chion to Jeban Tene, Rania San Yokomotoval, Tarnia Rugore, etc. And Gumte, the Jikova Gumte and the Niki, Jik Bemangu or Esword.
There are many reasons to engage in this practice of rejoicing. In the immediate term, rejoicing in the virtue of others and oneself, the virtuous qualities, leads to one's own mind being uplifted and joyous. So in the immediate term, happiness arises. But what it also leads to is the accumulation of extensive virtue. And not only that, so thirdly, it serves to counteract, purify opposing or opposite afflictive minds. So for example, when one rejoices in the virtuous qualities of others, or in the virtue that others are accumulating, it serves to counteract the afflictions such as jealousy and pride. Because when one rejoices in the good qualities of others, one is taking delight in their virtuous endeavors, in their spiritual development. And that serves to counteract jealousy. It counteracts competitiveness. And it counteracts pride in that one is not going to look down on them, seeing oneself as superior, but rather with sincere rejoicing in their endeavors. So in this way, through rejoicing, jealousy cannot arise. Through rejoicing, competitiveness and pride also cannot arise, but in fact are reduced in their strength as our rejoicing grows. And a fourth benefit of rejoicing, so not only the immediate happiness that arises, and secondly the accumulation of virtue, and thirdly the counteracting of the afflictions. Fourthly, it serves to encourage us to apply ourselves, to cultivate similar good qualities ourselves, or where we already have such good qualities, to cultivate them further. So in this way, by rejoicing in the good qualities of others, by rejoicing in our own endeavors, it serves to encourage us to strive ever more. And in this way, we bring the attainment of a path ever nearer. Then coming to the next seven of the seven limbs, requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma. Continuing in the text, requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma is set forth in the stanza. Again, I didn't read that out. Emanating and then Lama Tsongkhapa's commentary, emanating the same number of bodies, you exhort those who have awoken to complete Buddhahood in the fields of the 10 directions, those who have found unobstructed, exalted knowledge free of attachment, to teach the Dharma as soon as possible. Then the verse from the King of Prayers is, I implore all the protectors, lights of the world in the 10 directions, who have reached Buddhahood, which is without attachment, to turn the peerless wheel of the teaching.
And Tade Chuyukologuro Jesu Shuegidi Chasan Chagomar Sangye Yashugore Chuyukologora Guradi.
In the previous practice, that of rejoicing, we saw that rejoicing was directed to all sentient beings divided in varying classes. Here, in the next limb, that of requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma, one's making one's request not to all beings, not to all those who have attained paths, but to Buddhas.
Da ganam choju sede, ganam choju jidin dhamada sede, da choju sangye le, da dina sangye dina, sangye namla, ganam sede sangye dikilia, sangye le chugi kolo kuru che sangye le che. Sangye diki yunden le sekar sawa, da yunden chugor da nabo, choju jidin dhamada sede, choju semjen tamje gi da nga zulia, chi deja hondro ngaja nyomobe dai wandu yurchine chadang mosum yo xiang wandu yur di wange ngade dipa pautome ba sa de yore chesa dine za choju gi ngan semjen tamje gi ane dipa nyomoba ma meba söken di su go sene sangye gi meba su go re jere da chesa sangye meba sa sangye ya dipa tamje Choju Semja Tamjeki, Digba Tamje, Meva Server Seking, Dramares, Dremeres, or Dramala and Chemela Gurua, Cheme, also Nahuna, law by other, Nahun Meva said to law, Meva Segura, law by other Meva Segura, Chisan Dremas, Dremes, Dremes, said that Ma and the Chu wait Nashi, Chide, Dramas, mean Dick Pat Yanga, Dramala. Law by do logate, no Mumbadi, Mumba lawman, Nakuna, Jimmy, Maton Droda, Machin Kangam, Guyorwada, the machine waking Yakang, but Daviata, God Daviata, Diwachik, Jala, Yavasu, Cholata, in Ungurwa. It's a law partial setting Tongo, the Shasa, Mumbadi, Pakangadi, Pasha session, but she set it in Tongorwa, Karina, Tata Chitugoro, or Dinashi. 大家出去深圳他们这个是对下些，但第五个问个先往的上去呢，俺是第八蒙古的刚刚这样的，让他先买几把刚刚用的第几里过来，这张出去的几点被门把开的是呢，对下些他第五的门把几边，第三节个俺那蓝的蓝的人把马上了当他马拉起呢，俺门把第出面把虽然都门把设计，其实三节准备的是。 Dine kinga zui dwasha sheta dimugu mumba de meba suikan drame de da sangye re sa de luchi ne ganam chochi chi de drama ta se de da digi ane kyorong dine re sa sangye yunden chu go tangpo.
So looking at the verse from the King of Prayers, the first line in the Tibetan is our second line, lights of the world in the 10 direction. So this refers to the Buddhas, to whom the request is being made. So the Buddhas here are referred to the lights of the world in the 10 directions, in that the Buddhas abide in 10 directions, and wherever they are, they act in ways to help beings wherever they can. And the primary way they help is by teaching the Dharma. So in this way, they act like a light or a lamp that illuminates a dark room. And the way that Buddhas illuminate the darkness within the minds of beings, this darkness of lack of knowledge and confusion about how things actually are, is through teaching the Dharma. It's the Dharma that is taught, and then the Dharma that is that same Dharma that is then generated in the mind of suffering beings, that is the light that illuminates the confusion, the ignorance in the minds of beings. And this is the process by which Buddhas in the 10 directions guide beings to cultivate the lamp of the Dharma within, illuminate their confused ignorance, and start and continue on the process of abandoning the afflictions together with their seeds. So for us, the second line refers to the Buddhas, who are here the lights of the world, in that their function is to teach the Dharma, and in this way, the darkness of confusion and ignorance within beings is illuminated by beings being guided in cultivating the Dharma within.
Drama das. Dine Janju Rimba Sangye, Macha Nye Sedu, Jezan Da Sangye, Kyorangi, Jangchup Sedu, Janju Rimba Sangye, Sedu Kyoran Sangye, Sangade Kebare, Yama Janju Sangye Koban, Tobi Chedu, Jangchup Sede Sangye Koban, Tobi Chedu, Lamgi Rimba, Nyamle Rimba, Jene, Nyamlen Jene, and Sangye Bare, Seguada, Lam Nyamle Rimba Karesene, Anzu de Sheba Naji, that Jambada, Ni Jamba Komia, Nije Komia, Lasa Nanda Komia, the Nejashu Sem Ye Komia, the Nepajin to Yamlenja, it is a Semjan Tamjegu Dunda, some Dache, Jashu Sanju Koban Toyagi, Tobi, Tablam, Lam Yamlengi, Rimbati, Rimba, Sedo, Jizan Rimbati, Yamlenjin, you sang Yevare, Jashu Rimba, Sangi, said it.
The second line in the Tibetan is our third line. So one word in the Tibetan was missed out, but if my guess as the translator is because it would make the line very long. But it's just to add, I guess, gives the meaning. What's been missed out is that if we translate it later, there's something. The second line, who have passed through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, free from all attachment. So it's only one missed Tibetan word, but makes it very long. But the meaning then of the second line is You who are Buddhas, that's referring to the first line, you have trained in the graduated stages of the path to enlightenment. So the meaning of the Lamrim lineage, or the Lamrim tradition of texts rather. So you who have trained in these graduated stages of the path to enlightenment have attained Buddhahood. So this then is the first part of the second line.
마차 니 시드 다데니게 냠냠리 림바 차상 제네 균 차상 빵 연된 탐제 균 탐제 빵바인자 상계네 상지 균 탐제 매봐서 상와 상계와로 와서 그래서 다 마차와 시드 다 강라양 안지기 차과세데 차바당 안지기 바 차나 차바기야요 말 차바기야요 말에 안취 강라양 말로 지마지 지게 현리에 최 덴바라 아니 베나아즈나 차화용으로 가실라 랑초라 차화제 현초라 바마샤 지마나제 수수 차화이도 가나 시현 랑이 초 차화에서들래 또 야가제다 니링제용으로 와서 결혼이야 현리 차화쳐서 빵사와자 심제굴에 니링이 매바리 와스 람 냠는 제바 덴바라 니링 매바리 되네 마토 바실 결혼을 취가네지마 즉 뭐시현리에 덴바나 감나 매바 차상 현재 디킹이면 내디 신기면도 사다 내디 최 덴나 하고 면도 되네 가야 매바레스 결혼이야 디매바레스 제가 되네 현재 그래서네 매어김자 결혼기 니에바시도 최 탐정어섬도 봐 탈지 메시디게 니에바레스 니에바스 제가 토바리 니에바 토바시로 마차 니에세디 가르 니에바레라네 최 탐정어섬도 봐 탈지 메시 토바레 뻥바 탈도 베시 토 뻥부이 똑바디게 토바를 제가 방도 연된 차상 용수 속바디 결혼 예바래 결혼 토베어레스 지난주에 토바인자 현리아 예링 차다메 내지 최디 대신메 디 용문스메 되나 가강 가야 매바레스 제가 결혼을 연된 되는 주요래 사지 때까지 어두시네 상이게 연된디게 주요래
For us, the third line, the second in Tibetan concludes with, which is without attachment. So this can be presented in differing ways. One way is that we ourselves have attachment. Buddhas, of course, have abandoned completely all afflictions together with their seeds and stains. So being freed of attachment, a Buddha will not divide beings into categories or classes, thereby being closer to some and distant from others. But a Buddha has perfected all good qualities, including their love and their compassion, and holds all beings near. So there is no attachment for some and therefore a distance towards others. And then the word we have translated as reached, it has a deeper meaning, which is referring to all the good qualities that Buddhas have attained. In particular, the exalted wisdom of omniscience. And it's through this exalted wisdom of omniscience, which comes about independence, also on the abandonment of all afflictions, including attachment, that when the Buddha guides others without any closeness to some and distance from others, the Buddha is able to guide others in a way that perfectly is in accordance with their individual karmic backgrounds and spiritual dispositions of beings. So because of the exalted wisdom of omniscience that the Buddha has reached, the Buddha is able to guide beings perfectly in accordance with their own unique personalities.
다 공부 대달 다게 탐제라서 공부세다 제사다 공부 전주 상예 결혼 안내지 람냠리를 봐 타를 치는 상계 안젤이야 이게 차당 차상 빵바 탈체바 되네 시지 연된 말류바 탐제 녀바서 최된비게 젤이야 안지 간에스 때문에 된투야다 신기 동아세야 탑람 차상지 된투기 띵고요 봐서 결혼 공부래 성안조야 고외 동아래 탈지야 탈바다 탐지기 묘고 혼래 치킨 공부를 해서 내 공부를 해서 하셔서
The The third line in the Tibetan is part of our first line. So it starts with the word protectors. So protectors here again refers to the Buddhas. So the Buddhas are perfected beings. And being perfected, they strive to help beings attain their own state of perfection. So this is also referring to what we've just looked at in the previous line with the word reached, and also with the word without attachment. That Buddhas guide beings through their omniscient consciousness, without any closeness to some distance from others, guide them in how to reduce their afflictions and how to eradicate the seeds of the afflictions on their continuum. So in this way, the Buddhas serve as protectors for beings because they perfectly guide beings in how to cultivate the Dharma within. And this cultivation of the Dharma within is how beings protect themselves from suffering through the eradication of the causes of suffering. So therefore this term protectors refers to the Buddhas, and the way they protect beings is by guiding beings to develop the Dharma within and thereby gain protection from suffering.
Dine zada sanji yunden kishu digi paa sus juwe weche, chizan sanji le chiki kishu gyurang anzulya choshu zhuwa semja tamji gi duasha sheta dimu nyomo ba sewa chepe ki an lamden che ne sewa chepa za kyurang jume re seha. Ane sanji kobang tuwe chudo lam nyamni rinpa chasa nyamsu le ne pangto tarchimba re sha kyurang sanji pangto tarchimba re. Ane yunden maluba chasa nye cawa re. Nye za di kyurang ane nganzu ki ya semja tamji korwe dunga lo tarpa tamji kima kobang chiba chepe ki kyurang gombo re seha che. Dene ki pa sanji ki kishu yunden pa jiwe che. Ane da karchi wasen deda dagi tamji la kolo lana mebe kolo kuru sede chesa nge dene sanji desel ya ane nge dagi se nge seorwa de nge ane dene ki tam sanji di tamji la chuyu kolo koro che sene ya ane chigi sowa digu yue se chuyu kolo lana mebe kolo koro se chuyu kolo la do chen chuyu kolo koro che sene sowa digu yue se che.
What we've seen thus far in the verse is that some of the many good qualities of the Buddhas are being called to mind. Qualities such as they've reached Buddhahood, they've trained through all these various stages of training, or the stages of the path to enlightenment, and they've thereby abandoned all their afflictions completely and perfected all excellent qualities. So therefore, they have no bias, no partiality, but hold all beings equally dear without attachment. And they have reached Buddhahood. And reached here has this hidden meaning that they have the exalted wisdom of omniscience, and thereby guide beings perfectly in accordance with their own personalities in terms of illuminating the Dharma with the lamp of the path, illuminating the Dharma so beings can develop this within themselves, thereby eliminating the darkness of confusion, the darkness of ignorance, and gaining protection from suffering. Thereby the Buddhas are also protectors. Now to the fourth line in the Tibetan, which for us is on the first and the fourth. I implore all the protectors, so it's I implore, to turn the peerless wheel of the teachings. So requesting the Buddhas to teach the Dharma.
Lamrim choju shindu sangye number choju shindu janchubdu number sangye de sedu deji kan le yang zugu dirwa chitan sangye se de choju gi sangye de macha shin toba mebe kemba nyene se chitan choju shin sedu ane choju gi shin na shubige ane 가소레 semjen 탐지기 문바 세와 된달이야 문바 세와 제바세하자 초주시 되네 장축도 넘버 상계에 세도 장축이 지진이 지는 니버 책으로와 지산 상계고만 토요치도 람니 림바디기 파 냠는 전에 연내 탐제 가소레 상계고바 토바레 세지 상계에 지산 상계반자다 지지 가서래 니비게 마차신 세도 마차신 토바메바 세도 마차신 현리아 유일의 차당 차과차상면에 차과차상 방차와레스 토바메바 세도 다연이디 연대 신이 마랍신이 민도사다 네디 된투사 말해야 돼 되니기 강야메바 강아 강야메바 차상 된투에서 토바메비 켐바레스 제사 가네시 팀베이나 연된 마 최간의 송고도 심전에 감나 매바당 안데나 최간의 차상 캠바데 지상 캠비 연된도 스녀바레 사지 도시는 대지 연된 죄디 즉시디나 지도나 디로와 안디바드로와 연된 죄지 도시 연된 죄바디바 디바로.
So now coming to the commentary from Lama and Tsongkhapa. So you have it there. The order of the English and Tibetan is really quite mixed. So I need to go in the order of the Tibetan. So it starts with complete Buddhahood in the fields of the 10 directions. So this then is, because that's where the Tibetan starts, for us it's the second line. This refers directly back to the second, for us again, the second line of the verse, light of the world in the 10 directions. So this refers to the Buddhas, those who abide in all 10 directions. Wherever they are engaged in activities to benefit beings. Then the Tibetan continues, those who have found unobstructed, exalted knowledge, free of attachment. The found then relates to that the once ordinary being practiced or trained through all the varying stages of the path to enlightenment and then achieved enlightenment. So we had that in the verse with reached Buddhahood. And then unobstructed, exalted knowledge is the meaning behind reached, that the Buddhas have the omniscient consciousness. And through this, they are able to benefit beings perfectly in accordance with the particular spiritual background and karmic predisposition of beings. So this is the, where we here, those who reach unobstructed, exalted knowledge, so the omniscient consciousness, and then free of attachment, which we also had in the verse, which refers to the lack of partiality or bias towards beings, but rather holding all equally dear.
다 되네기 캠바 연된디게 봐주 되네 리도 말렘바 남라 류간 denyi도 주네 최된바 꿀마 다보 세데 제자다 류다 denyi도 세데 제자 메다 류 소수고 류디 아니 지게 류기 장다냐 바파 주이세네 아니 상이 되네게 연된디 봐 셈라제 안 되네자 안 교고 이정도 말렘바 교고 안 소리야 최유콜로 고로 제세데 최송로 제세고데 최유콜로 최된바로 꿀마 다보세 최된로 최송로 제세네야 꿀마치유에서다 다보 안데 예 교고라서 린도 말렘바세도 교고 윤링부 마샤바 장들 람사 나줄이야 류딩이 주세데 류라 지딘 감 류장다 년베게 네 류디게 딘데 주제 안도시네 안지 류유권에 안지라 테모자 류유권의 구십체 나게 권에 되네기 파소 직추유고 고로지 신파 안도시는 슈구에 세월다 최된바 꾸마 다보스 최구 송로지에 신파 다보스 슈구에 세월다
The Tibetan concludes with, so for us it has those who have awoken. So this, as we have here in English, the translation is fine, just the order is very different. So those who have awoken, those who have attained complete Buddhahood, emanating the same number of bodies. So in the same way that the Buddhas pervade the 10 directions, they emanate everywhere where there is need, everywhere where there are beings that are suffering. And then lastly, to teach the Dharma as soon as possible. So this is how the Tibetan also concludes, and this is the heartfelt request that to teach right now without delay.
나 상yi기 연된디게 파 아니 죄제 상yi 윤대디 바 냠는 두소스 나샤 데네게 켜나 윤대 데네 톱샤 지나다 니 나신지야 나야 안데 산주 고방 토우베 저런게 윤대 데네 야고 디가 데네시 냠는 지기 제자 데네자 하는 안줄이야 저저 셈제 탐제 고유 동안을 대제 산주 고방 토고 제장 아주 셈제 탐제야 최유 콜로디 결혼게 데네게 제 송로지 최 송로시 안줄이야 송로시에서 그러다 송로시에서 송로시에서 송로지 취규홀로 꼬르세다 마사지 송바이나 나주 냠술레네 냠술레디 나주 귤라 상예기 냠는지베 개와디 나신지 나주 귤레 기후로와 제산다 나주 귤레 기나 나주게 냠는지나 나주기네 마오바나 시안레 파시에시네 안 시안레야 되네 개와주게 제산 취규홀로 꼬르세다 공간도 모다도 콜로 꼬르 모두 스토시 타르 부시 루고로 와다 다른 루고로 어디나시 산지 송비게 취 냠는 게 림바디 송로치 네 냠는 지기 세지 송로치 소로 제가 네 냠는지 데니게 냠는지 바디 샤레 바시지 냠는지 한 셴sem자 탐절이야 이제 판도 디기투베 동아세야 되는 용으로서 돈다니 볼라 산지기 윤내디 파스 유진냠는지 다른 뭐 윤내디 파주 산지기라 곰보레 아는 아주 녀모서 쯤에 나지레 결혼 냠르베 산지고 바디네 토 결혼을 기주인데 니네 디나신 안줄이야 다 정보 말고 균리고 되네 람상 안줄이야 균리 람상 안줄이야 되네게 최대 송로제 세주 당이 아니 지게야 라보 테모자 아니 게 류데 베 나지부 마엠바 네 류 봄다 동라마 두다 자나니 부이 주진 나도 망고지기 차상기 안 결혼이야 아니 최 송로제 주고여서 그러다
In verses such as these and others, where the qualities of the Buddha are mentioned, it is done in general for several reasons. Most explicitly will be through reading through the qualities of the Buddha. This will lead to the generation of faith within the mind of the reader, and thereby accumulate virtue. But also, another key reason for having verses such as these where the qualities of the great beings are mentioned is so as not only to, or independence on the generation of faith, to generate a determination that I too will strive to develop these self-same qualities in myself. So thereby one takes, not only gives rise to reverence in the qualities of these great beings, but gives rise to a determination to use what remains of this life well. So here, where one is requesting for the wheel of Dharma to be turned, one is requesting that these perfected beings, they teach us, that they teach us right now. And through this request for teachings, whilst this is the explicit request for teachings to be given, the implicit commitment that we are making through this request is our commitment to training precisely in the way we are being taught. Moreover, we are also implicitly committing to, through our training, through these endeavors to develop good qualities within us, we also committing, secondly, to benefit others in the same way that the Buddhas have done in accordance with our own capacity. So in other words, by requesting teachings, we are indirectly committing to training those teachings, and as these qualities develop in us, to benefit others through these qualities. And then when the visualization that one makes with such a request is one generates this deep faith within our heart, relating to the Buddhas as being our protector, our lamp or the light of the world, as being our guide, and requesting them with sincerity, teach me right now without delay, and I will train my mind precisely in accordance with your teachings, and I will benefit others. And one is making this heartfelt request with palms joined, and not just with this physical body, but we imagine limitless emanations of our own body making this request to the Buddhas.
다 지기 콜로 꼬르체스디 콜로 꼬르세디 다 콜로 꼬르네 콜로지 하고라 다 콜로데 가레세디 제사장 안주기 제상 콜로 꼬르세도 고 자와로 싫어하다. 제사 추유 콜로 꼬르치스리다 추유 콜로 꼬르야 아니 추유 콜로스나 간치 레기레세지. 좀 지티와실요 추유 콜로스 간치 레기레나 추유 콜로들라 니요레 롱귀 추코로세 또베 추코로세 니용고레. 제사 추유 콜로 꼬르야게 추유 콜로들라 가레스나 추유 콜로들라 롱귀 추코도 또베 추코로세 니용고레. 룽귀 추어서야데 상이 숨베 숨 최디 차사 상이 숨베기 최 차사 룽귀 추어래 베네 아주게 즉 데네기다 베네 되고는 손샤바다 데네기 안에 유유데 거 손시베 상이 숨베 숨 차사 저러봐 내라 민 최고래디 최고지래 룽귀 추어서야데레제 제가 디 룽귀 추어서데 상이 마 현다지를 숨 현다지 냠는지 디 나한시지 상이 현다지 마 되지마 손에도 룽귀 초코라 꼬르고 꼬야디 룽귀 초코라 사야디 상이 숨비 숨디레다 숨디제 죄되면 숨 또베 초코라 사야디 상이 예수비 숨데라 데네 냠술리는 아줄레 초람 졸람 토람 곰람 밀로람 셋 또베 깨셔와 람냠네 람라 차사 람경 람차사래야 나중에 초람 졸람 토람 곰람 진짜 초람에 내가서 대지 예 진배 80주에 냠는 차상 또 열어봐. 지 차상 람디게를 차상디 또베 추어서 또베 추어. 차상 또베 추어서 당보 상이 룽귀 추어도 고고래. 룽귀 추어고는 대한들 말 송고와. 진짜 송고 송여도 아주 년여도 년비기 되는데 냠수 년여도 똑바디 상기 코론 길을 여바는 냠는지 초람 깨바나신 아주기로 초람지 끼용으로 또베 추어서 디게 제가 디야 야기치는 땅 아주기 냠는게 땅 아주기다야 마음바나야 소소 로마칠마 시제 거기로 초람지 끼주베네 또베 추어도 수용 거지다 먼저 콜로데 넘지 뭐라 콜로는 거제 다른 우루로 제가 디네자 상이기 손지비 룽귀 추어도 또베 추어디 마직지마 냠는지 지기지지는 대sem제 몽볼을 파도로 저거 저거 와서 제가 최고 거서 최고 대가래 최고 콜로 대가래스네 델리니요레스 룽귀 추어도 또베 추어서 니요레 룽귀 추어도 상이기 손비 손디게 찾아 룽귀 추어레스 다 또베 추어서디 디 상이 아주기 람냠레지 람디게 찾아로 또베 추어라고 그래제 또베길래 초람 초 내중 삼바 제만 많이 바뀌네 되네야나 진바 수르세베 냐면 그 람디를 바 찾아 람디게라 또베 추어 상이 손비 손디게라 룽귀 추어서 어떤 제가 디레 거세데
So as a translator, I missed something in the previous segment, and now Geshe has built on that. So in the previous segment, Geshe said that when we request the teachings, that is our explicit request, but the implicit is the commitment to train in precisely the way that we are taught, and then secondly, the commitment that through our training, to bring benefit to others, to express the Dharma that's been cultivated within, to express that in ways of benefit to others. And then the third one I missed, that includes ourselves then teaching the Dharma to others. Now to come to what Geshe said now. So what does this expression, turning the wheel of Dharma, because this clearly is an action, so you're turning the wheel of Dharma. So what does this mean? Well, to understand it, we call to mind the twofold division of the teachings of the Dharma. The first is scriptural teachings, and the second is realized teachings. Scriptural teachings, these are the teachings of the Buddha in the varying categories, such as all the sutras and tantras. So the scriptural teachings are those that are expressed by one person to others. The second class is that of the realized teachings. So the scriptural teachings are the cause that leads to the result of the realized teachings. So through being the recipients of the scriptural teachings, through hearing and studying teachings, one then reflects and meditates, trains one's mind, put these into practice, and then generates paths, such as paths of accumulation, preparation, seeing, and meditation. These are the realized teachings, these paths in one's continuum. They are the realized Dharma, the realized teachings, as well as then the ongoing trainings in, for example, the 6 perfections, which one engages in on the paths. So when one has already attained the paths of the Bodhisattva, one trains in the varying perfections. So these are the realized teachings. So here, when we requesting that the Buddhas to teach, where we are thereby implicitly make the commitment to train in what is taught to us, and then to express what we are developing within us in our interactions with others, and then, thirdly, we are accepting our responsibility to continue the circle of turning the Dharma. We take on the responsibility of being part of this group of beings who are striving to help others to gain freedom from suffering, help others to accumulate causes for happiness. So therefore, we accept our responsibility that through our own hearing, reflecting, and meditating, as we develop qualities within, in accordance with our qualities, in accordance with our capacity, we too will contribute to the ongoing turning of the wheel of Dharma in order to benefit suffering beings.
약보를 선배게 삼 가와 코미디 아니 제수 일하나 제바지 디제베는 아주 삼나나 두삼 땅고래서 안데는 나 양알미도 소와 가서 주교콜로 코로세스데 야사기 이구선 두케 연대디 파데 안디네게 연대디 대제 아니 녜야 되는 신념은 지기 제사 되네 장아도 샘제 탐절이야 안 저런 게마 최대한 들려 송로지 세지 코로지 세슈에디 디 삼다들과 디네게 삼다 제사 디 삼다데 삼두스 땅고래 디다바는 삼도 쳐상 깨와래 세월도 송거로다.
To summarize tonight, what to take away to include in your reflections is that when one rejoice through recalling the qualities of great beings such as Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, heroes, solitary realizers, as well as all ordinary beings, including oneself, recall their incredible qualities, rejoice in them, and thereby use this virtuous mind of rejoicing as an impetus to strive to accumulate such qualities in oneself, or where one has them, to develop them ever further. And then, in terms of the second of the 7 limbs we looked at, thereby again one recalls the great qualities here just of the Buddha, and thereby request the Buddhas to teach us. And with this explicit request, we make the implicit commitment: I will train just as you are teaching me. I will train my mind just as you are teaching me. And I will express these qualities as I'm developing them to others by being of benefit to others. And then thirdly, I accept that it is my responsibility to contribute to the turning of the wheel of Dharma, to teach in accordance with my own knowledge and skill and capacity. All of these varying minds mentioned here in both the 7 limbs of rejoicing and requesting turning the wheel of the Dharma, these are virtuous minds, and within each of these limbs are contained many individual virtuous minds. And all of these virtuous minds are the accumulation of merit, the accumulation of virtue, which are the causes that will lead to happiness. So thank you very much. Sorry I've gone a little over time. If you have questions, there'll be time for that tomorrow. So thank you all very much.